I heard her voice from the hallway, and everything changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't meant for me. That was the problem. It slid under the door like a secret, warm and unguarded, and it stopped me mid-step with my keys still in my hand. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it, the way you do when you're tired and your mind starts filling quiet spaces with things you want. But then she laughed, soft, a little breathless, and the sound landed somewhere behind my ribs and stayed there. I'd been living in that building for 6 months, long enough to know which floorboard creaked near the stairs and which neighbor slammed their door every morning at 7. Long enough to know her apartment was 2 doors down from mine. Long enough to know her name, even though I rarely said it out loud. She was older than anyone I'd ever been close to. Mid-40s, maybe a little more. She carried herself like someone who had already learned the hard lessons and didn't need to announce it. When we passed each other in the hallway, she smiled with her eyes first, then her mouth followed, like it needed a moment to catch up. I told myself that meant nothing. I was good at telling myself that. That evening, the hallway smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and rain. My shoes were damp from the walk back, my jacket heavier than it should have been. I should have gone inside. I should have turned the key and disappeared into my own quiet. Instead, I stood there, listening to her voice through the thin wall. She was on the phone. I could tell by the rhythm. Short pauses, a murmur, a sigh that stretched longer than the words before it. She sounded tired, not the kind that sleep fixes, the kind that settles in your shoulders and makes even small decisions feel heavy. I didn't mean to listen. That's the lie I still try to believe. But I leaned closer without thinking, my forehead almost touching the cool paint of the wall. She said something I couldn't quite make out, then went quiet. The silence lingered. I held my breath like I might break it. When her door opened suddenly, I jumped back like I'd been burnt. She stood there with her phone still in her hand, hair pulled into a loose knot that never quite stayed put. She looked surprised, not alarmed, just caught. For a moment we stared at each other, the hallway light buzzing above us, too bright for how late it was. "Oh," she said. "Hey, hey," I echoed, immediately hating how young my voice sounded. "Sorry," she added, gesturing vaguely behind her. I didn't realize how thin the walls were. "It's fine," I said too quickly. I mean, no, not fine. I didn't hear much. Just, I stopped. Words abandoned me at the worst possible moment. She studied my face like she was deciding whether to believe me. Then she smiled, smaller than usual. "Long day." "Yeah," I said. "You?" She hesitated. Just a beat too long. Something like that. We stood there, neither of us moving aside. I noticed details I shouldn't have. The faint crease between her eyebrows, the way her fingers tightened around her phone, then loosened again. She noticed things too, I think. She glanced at my wet shoes, my half-unzipped jacket. "You're going to catch a cold standing there," she said. "I probably already have," I replied, and she laughed again, softer this time. That was how it started. Not with fireworks or a dramatic confession. Just a hallway, a tired laugh, and 2 people pretending not to feel the pull in the quiet between them. Over the next few weeks, we found reasons to run into each other. Coincidences that stacked up until they didn't feel accidental anymore. A borrowed book, a shared elevator ride that lasted 1 floor too long. Conversations that drifted, paused, then picked up again like neither of us wanted to be the first to end them. Sometimes she talked too much, filling the space with stories about work, about things she said didn't matter. Sometimes she went quiet, staring at her coffee like it might answer for her. I learned when not to ask. I learned when to stay. I didn't tell anyone about her. I wasn't sure how. I met someone felt both too small and too dangerous. The night everything tilted, I was halfway up the stairs when my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. Just one line. "Are you home?" Before I could answer, her door opened down the hall, and she looked at me like she already knew what my response would be that I didn't answer her right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because my thumb hovered over the screen like it might give me away. I was home. I was always home. What she was really asking was something else, and we both knew it. She stepped back in her apartment, and left the door half open. That felt deliberate, an invitation without the word. I followed, telling myself I was just being neighborly. The lie felt thin even to me. Her place smelled like coffee that had been reheated too many times. The lights were low, one lamp on in the corner, casting shadows that softened the edges of everything. She kicked off her shoes and gestured for me to sit, then didn't sit herself, just leaned against the counter, arms folded like she needed something solid behind her. I wasn't sure if I should text, she said. I almost didn't, but you did. She nodded. Yeah, there was a time, she told me, when she used to be married to someone who filled rooms with noise, but never listened. She said it casually, like it was an old fact she'd memorized. They'd been together since her 20s. Built a life, sold a house, signed papers. No dramatic ending, just a slow erasing. When she spoke, her eyes stayed on the window, not on me. I don't really date, she added. Not anymore. I wanted to tell her I understood. I didn't, not really. My past was shorter, messy, a few relationships that burned bright and ended fast. Girls my age who wanted certainty I couldn't promise yet. I said something about being bad at staying still. She smiled at that, but it didn't reach her eyes. The risk sat between us, heavy and obvious. The age gap, the looks we'd get, the questions that would come later if anyone knew. She was old enough to have a son my age. That thought should have stopped everything. Instead, it made me more careful with my hands, my words. She poured coffee anyway, even though it was late. We drank it standing up, mugs warm against our palms. At one point she laughed and said, "This is a terrible idea," not looking at me when she did. Then why does it feel like this? I asked, and immediately wished I could take it back. She finally met my eyes. For a second, something unguarded crossed her face. Loneliness, maybe, or recognition. I don't know, she said. That's what scares me. The room went quiet. Not awkward, charged. I became painfully aware of the space between us, how easily it could disappear. She reached out to take my mug, our fingers brushing by accident. Neither of us pulled away right away. Her hand trembled just a little. "I should ask you to go," she said softly. "You're not," I replied, just as softly. Her breath hitched. She didn't deny it. Instead, she rested her forehead against my shoulder, like she'd decided something without saying it out loud. I stayed still, heart pounding, afraid that if I moved, I'd break the moment. Outside, a car passed, tires hissing on wet pavement. Inside, we stood there close enough to feel each other breathe, close enough to know that whatever this was, it had already gone too far to pretend it was nothing. She pulled back first. Not far, just enough to remind both of us where we were standing. Her forehead left my shoulder, and the air between us felt colder immediately. She pressed her lips together, like she was sealing something shut. "This can't be a habit," she said. I nodded too fast. "Of course. I wasn't. I didn't think I know," she cut in, then softened. "I know you didn't." She set my mug down with a little too much care, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the counter. Control where she could get it. I watched her hands because it was easier than watching her face. "I should have stayed in my apartment," I said. "Yes," she replied. Then quieter, "But I'm glad you didn't." That was the problem. Every time we tried to draw a line, it curved back toward us. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Once, then again. She glanced at the screen and went still. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. The name lit up briefly before the screen went dark again. A man's name. Familiar enough to make my stomach tighten. "My ex," she said anyway. "He does that. Calls twice like it's an emergency. It never is." She didn't pick up. Just flipped the phone face down like that ended it. It didn't. I became suddenly aware of myself. My age, my place in her life, how temporary I might be without meaning to be. I stepped back, creating space this time on purpose. "This is exactly why," she said, noticing. "Why shouldn't?" The doorbell rang. We both flinched. She laughed under her breath, sharp and humorless. "Of course." She looked at me, eyes searching. "Stay here." Please. I stayed. I always stayed. From the living room, I heard her open the door. A familiar male voice followed. Older, confident, annoyed in that casual way of someone who still felt entitled to her time. He said her name like it belonged to him. I was in the neighborhood, he said. Thought I'd stop by. My chest tightened. I leaned against the counter, staring at the wall like it might give me instructions. They talked. Low voices. History passing back and forth in sentences I couldn't hear. I caught fragments. Still haven't sold the house. You don't answer texts. I worry about you. Then her voice changed. Firmer. Shorter. I have company, she said. There was a pause. A longer one. Company, he repeated. She didn't explain. She didn't say my name. That felt like both protection and erasure. When she came back into the kitchen, her face was flushed, not from attraction this time, but from something closer to anger. Or relief. Or both. He's gone, she said. I should go too, I replied, though every part of me resisted it. She nodded, then shook her head. I don't want you to. We stood there again, the same distance as before, but everything had shifted. The risk was no longer abstract. It had a voice, a name, a doorbell. I reached out, then stopped myself halfway. She closed the gap instead. Her hand found mine, not gripping, not hesitant. Just there. Real. We're making this harder than it needs to be, she whispered. Or easier than it should be, I said. She didn't let go. Neither did I. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the way her hand had fit around mine, like it already knew the shape. The way she'd said, I don't want you to, without drama, without pleading, just truth. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the doorbell vibrating against the quiet, heard that man's voice saying her name like it still belonged to him. By morning, jealousy had settled into me like a low-grade fever. Not loud, not proud, just there. We avoided each other for 2 days after that. Not intentionally, at least that's what I told myself. Our schedules suddenly didn't line up. When I heard her door open, mine stayed closed. When I stepped into the hallway, it was empty. The silence felt louder than any conversation we'd had. On the 3rd day, I ran into her in the laundry room. She was folding clothes with too much focus, aligning edges that didn't need aligning. Her hair was down this time, brushing her shoulders, and I had to look away before she noticed I was staring. Hi, I said. Hi, she answered, then added, I wondered when I'd see you. There it was, the space between words. I leaned against a washer, pretending to be casual. Busy week. She smiled, but it wavered. Same. We stood there listening to machines thrum and click. Someone's socks tumbled behind glass. The air smelled like detergent and something unfinished. I shouldn't have let you stay, she said suddenly. My head snapped up. Do you regret it? No, she said immediately. Too fast. Then quieter. That's the problem. I swallowed. He came back, didn't he? Her hands stilled. She didn't look at me. He keeps trying. And you? I keep saying no. Finally, she met my eyes. Does that bother you? The question landed heavier than it should have. I laughed once sharp. I don't really get a say, do I? That's not what I asked. The machines clicked off one by one. The room felt smaller. Yes, I said. It bothers me. She exhaled, like she'd been waiting for that. You're too young to be dealing with this. Stop saying that, I replied. You don't get to decide what I can handle. She took a step toward me, then another, close enough that I could see the faint line near her mouth, the one that deepened when she worried. You don't understand what this costs, she said. Then tell me, I said, or stop looking at me like that. Silence stretched. Her jaw tightened. Something broke loose in her eyes, not tears. Resolve. I think about you when I shouldn't, she admitted. At the worst times, in the quiet. I compare everyone else to. She stopped herself, breath uneven. This is reckless. I reached out without thinking, my fingers brushing her wrist. She didn't pull away. Then be reckless, I whispered. Her breath caught. Her hand slid up my arm, slow, deliberate. She leaned in, so close I could feel the warmth of her mouth near mine. and a voice echoed down the hallway, calling her name. She froze. So did I doubt the voice belonged to her daughter? I recognized it before she even turned the corner. Bright, familiar, carrying that easy confidence of someone who knew this place as home. My stomach dropped in a way I hadn't felt before, sharp and immediate, like stepping off something solid and realizing too late there was nothing under you. She pulled her hand away from my arm. Too fast. Her daughter stopped short when she saw us standing there, close enough that no explanation would sound convincing. She looked from her mother to me, eyebrows lifting slightly, not accusing, not curious, just noticing. "Oh," she said. "Am I interrupting something?" "No," her mother replied, a beat too late. "We were just talking." I stepped back. The space between us returned, awkward and undeniable. I felt suddenly very young, very visible. Her daughter smiled politely at me. "Hey, you're the neighbor, right?" "Yeah," I said, "from down the hall." She nodded, already losing interest. "I'm just grabbing some things. I forgot my charger." She disappeared into the apartment, leaving the door open, leaving us exposed. Her mother didn't look at me. She folded her arms like she was holding herself together. I didn't know she was coming by. "It's fine," I said, though it wasn't. "I should go." She hesitated. "You don't have to." I shook my head. "I think I do." As I turned to leave, her daughter reappeared, phone in hand. She glanced between us again, then smiled in a way that felt a little too knowing. "Mom," she said lightly, "Dad called earlier." The word hit harder than I expected. Her mother closed her eyes. "Just for a second." "What did he want?" "Said he's moving back," her daughter replied. "Told me not to tell you yet," but she shrugged. "Oops." Silence crashed down. "I'm going," I said quietly. Her mother finally looked at me then. Something in her face shifted. Fear, yes, but also urgency. "Wait." I stopped, hand on the doorframe. "He's coming back," she said, as if saying it out loud made it real in a new way. "You want to fix things? Everyone expects me to try." "And what do you want?" I asked. She opened her mouth, closed it. The answer scared her. Her daughter watched us now, no longer pretending not to. The air felt charged, fragile. "I can't do this halfway," her mother said. "Not with you. Not with anyone." The words hurt, even if they weren't rejection, especially because they weren't. "I know," I said. That night, I packed a bag. Not because I was running, but because staying felt like pretending nothing had changed. I left a note under her door. Just 2 lines. No explanations. No pressure. "I'm still here. When you decide what you want." 3 days passed. Then 4. On the 5th night, there was a knock on my door. Not tentative. Certain. When I opened it, she stood there, eyes steady, keys in her hand like she'd already made up her mind. "We need to talk," she said. And this time, there was no one left to interrupt us. She didn't wait for an invitation. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. My apartment felt smaller with her in it, like the walls were leaning in to hear what she'd say. She stood there for a moment, keys still in her hand, knuckles white, breathing like she'd walked up too many stairs too fast. "I told him no," she said. Just that. "No preambere. No apology." I didn't speak. I was afraid if I did, I'd break whatever nerve had brought her here. "He wants the version of me that doesn't exist anymore," she went on. "The one who compromises first, who stays quiet to keep the peace." She finally looked at me then. "I'm done being her." I leaned against the counter, grounding myself. "And your daughter?" "She knows," she said. "Not everything, but enough." She asked me if I was happy. A humorless smile touched her mouth. I couldn't lie. Silence stretched. Heavy, but not empty. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not of you. Of myself. Of choosing something that might not last, and still choosing it anyway." I stepped closer, not touching, giving her space to pull back if she needed to. "You don't owe me anything," I said. I meant what I wrote. I wasn't asking you to decide for me. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm here." Her shoulders sagged then, the tension finally breaking. She looked tired. Real. Human. Not the composed woman from the hallway, not the careful one in the kitchen. Just her. I don't know how this looks, she said. I don't know what people will say. I don't know if I'll wake up one day and wonder if I was selfish. And I don't know if I'll still be the same person in 5 years, I said. But I know who I am right now. She laughed softly, eyes shining. You say things like that and don't even realize how dangerous you are. I reached out then, slowly, gave her time to say no. She didn't. Her hands came up to my chest, resting there like they belonged. We stood like that for a long moment, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. If we do this, she whispered, we do it honestly. No hiding. No pretending this is easy. Okay, I said. My voice shook. Okay. She pulled back just enough to look at me. Really look, like she was memorizing my face in case courage failed her later. Then she kissed me. Not rushed. Not desperate. A decision made with her whole body. Her hands trembled. So did mine. It wasn't perfect. Our noses bumped. She laughed quietly against my mouth, then kissed me again, firmer this time. When we finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. This is terrifying, she said. Yeah, I agreed. But it feels right. She nodded. It does. We didn't make promises. We didn't plan futures. We just stood there, holding each other, knowing something had shifted that couldn't be undone. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, we chose to stay till we didn't rush after that. That surprised me the most. I thought choosing each other would feel like a starting gun. Like suddenly everything would move too fast to control. Instead, it slowed us down. We became deliberate, honest in ways that were sometimes uncomfortable. She told her daughter more, not all at once, but enough that silence didn't sit between them like a lie. I listened from the other room the night it happened, heart in my throat, ready to step in if I was needed. I wasn't. Her daughter cried, then asked questions, then said, quietly, I just want you to be okay. That mattered more than anyone else's opinion. The ex came by one last time. Not dramatic, just sad. I wasn't there, but she told me everything afterward, sitting cross-legged on my bed like she'd done it 100 times. She said he looked at her like he finally understood he was too late. She said she felt relief and then guilt for feeling it. I didn't try to fix that. I just let her talk until the words ran out. People didn't notice the age difference. Of course they did. Some smiles were polite. Some weren't. A friend asked me if I was sure. I said yes before he finished the question. That was how I knew. We stayed in the building for a while. Same hallway. Same thin walls. This time, when I heard her voice, it wasn't a secret. Sometimes it was calling my name. Sometimes it was laughing from my kitchen while she stole my coffee mug and claimed it tasted better that way. We learned each other's habits. How she needed quiet in the mornings, how I talked too much when I was nervous. How she reached for my hand in public without thinking now. It wasn't perfect. We argued. About schedules. About expectations. About whether I left my shoes in the wrong place on purpose. Once, she asked if I worried I'd wake up one day and resent her for the years between us. I told her the truth, that I worried more about waking up without her. She didn't answer right away. Then she kissed my temple and said, Me too. The night that stays with me most isn't the first kiss or the confrontation or even a knock on my door. It's a quiet one. We're standing in a hallway again, months later. Same spot. The light still buzzes. She leans against the wall, tired after a long day, and I wrap an arm around her without thinking. She rests her head on my shoulder like it's the most natural thing in the world. I heard your voice from the hallway, she says, smiling to herself. Remember? I do, I say. She looks up at me then, eyes steady, unafraid. I'm glad you didn't walk away. So am I. I reply, and I mean it, with no hesitation left. So now I want to ask you, have you ever heard a voice at the wrong moment and known your life wouldn't go back to the way it was? Have you ever chosen something that scared you because not choosing it scared you more? And if you were standing in that hallway, would you have stayed?